what we're looking at here is an overview of the system. How the different sets of Neigong weave into each other to create a coherent whole. Okay? And how the whole Neigong package is the internal mechanics of things like Tai Chi and Bagua. And it's also worth saying that this package is present in Taoist meditation, albeit invisible. Yes? It sits there. Okay? So, we have a base foundation, we have an intermediate level which produces power, and we have a high level which integrates the system. So you have foundation, power generation, and integration. Now, also these three levels, you have two pillars. You have energy gates with the spiraling energy body on one pillar, heaven and earth and bend the bow on the other pillar. And the gods is the cap that sits on the top. Now, energy gates and spiraling energy body is about all your turning, twisting work, your horizontal power in the internal arts. Okay? So you have movements such as cloud hands, which, as you can see, weight shift, turning, twisting of the soft tissues, and you go into the swings with this practice. Again, more turning, more twisting work. Yes? But its base is horizontal. Yes, there's some vertical work, especially with the third swing and then your spine stretch. Spine stretch itself is very vertical. But the base of the movements are horizontal. When you go to heaven and earth, bend the bow, this pillar is your vertical pillar. The last movement in your energy gates and spiraling energy body practice is your spine stretch, which initiates the vertical. And then, heaven and earth, you get deep into the vertical, bending and stretching, opening and closing. Okay, so this is very obvious bending and stretching work. But also, at the same time that you're doing bending and stretching, there's elements of horizontal, where the muscle groups in the legs twist and rotate around the bones. Energy gates, horizontal, heaven and earth, vertical, on your foundation practice. These two sets will give you the bulk of the movements, the bulk of the physical motions that you're going to be doing in Qigong, Tai Chi, Bagua. Okay? And in the energy gates, especially with the swings and the cloud hands, you're learning how the rotation of the soft tissues on the bones can engage in power and drive your motions. And when that's alive in your body, then you can get the twisting in and the twisting out of the soft tissues without the body moving horizontally. And when you get these twistings of the soft tissues in and out, so the bones remain still and all the soft tissue twists around the bone. This creates some very strong power vectors through the body, really loosens up and lets all the toxins be released from the system. Energy gate starts the work, heaven and earth takes it to the next level. Yes? Then when we start looking at the power production level, the middle level of the system, you have spiraling energy body, which sits above energy gates. It uses exactly the same physical motions. There's no difference. Cloud hands and the 3 swings and the spinal stretch, same physical motions. But the internal energetics are completely different, because energy gates is water and spiraling energy body is fire. Energy gates is about releasing the tension, sinking your chi, creating a safety net for any other work that you do in Neigong. Whenever you have a problem, whenever you have energy that you don't know what to do with it, in your practices you may loosen up some stuck energy in your system and it starts to move around you. You have already learned the process of sinking your chi and you can dump it in the earth. When your energy gates practice and your ability to sink and dissolve blocked energy, then you're ready to move on to the spiraling energy body, where you bring the energy up and you move it to any part of the body at will instantly, rather than the downward flow. You would not go into the fire spiraling energy body practice until your ability to sink and dissolve energy is very good. Because in gravity, if you throw something in the air, it will come down, yes? If you drop something on the floor, it doesn't necessarily go up. Energy is its direct opposite. Energy that goes down will naturally come back up. But when you bring energy up in the body, it doesn't necessarily come back down again. If you look at the problems, too much use of the computer, stress, anxiety, it brings the energy up, but it doesn't necessarily allow it to come back down again. This is why the water practice, the path of least resistance, allowing the water to flow downhill, this is the safety net of the system. Yes? So, only when your water practice is good do you move into fire. Any problems with bringing energy up during your fire practice, you have control over your energy and you can sink it and root it in the earth, ground yourself, and prevent the energy getting stuck in your body. Heaven and earth bend the bow. Heaven and earth has quite a complex movement. Yes? Whereas bend the bow is very simple. Bend the bow is taking the internal work of heaven and earth, the open and closing, and making a very strong one-cell motion. Yes? In heaven and earth, in its complexities, you can actually get some of the joints and cavities open and closing at different times. And that will naturally happen with the way the arms and the body moves. Okay? In bend the bow, everything condenses to a singular point and everything expands away from that point and makes that open and closing very strong. It also activates the spine fully, and it's called the spinal qigong. It's where you can deal with problems of the spine. First of all, in heaven and earth, you get into the spinal ligaments and you get all the kinks out of the spinal ligaments and really lengthen open the spine. Yes? And then in bend the bow, you get into compression and release. This is why bend the bow creates a lot of raw power. Bend the bow creates raw physical power. Spiraling energy creates raw energetic power. This is your power band. Yes? So, in energy gates, you start the spinal work with the spinal stretch. releasing open the tension between the individual vertebrae. Heaven and earth then takes the spine into one piece and gets you into your spinal ligaments, especially the longitudinal anterior and posterior ligaments. And it takes all the kinks out and opens up the spine and prepares it for the deep compression and release that you do in Bend the Bow. Then eventually all of this work accumulates into God's plane in the clouds, the earth element, yes? Water, wood, fire, metal for Bend the Bow, and earth for God's plane in the clouds. So now God's, being the earth element, contains all the others, and it takes all of the internal practices from the other four sets, combines it into one coherent whole, and completes the process. Here you go into energizing the brain and activating the central channel through the bone marrow. Some people call it bone marrow washing, yes, and other names, okay? But it's where the whole entire Negung come into one practice. Of course, you can learn the physical movements of the gods and have nothing inside of it. Or you can learn the physical movements of the gods and have some of the Negung inside of it. Or you can take your time learning every piece along the path and then combine everything into one whole. So, we also have the possibility that after energy gates and heaven and earth having the bulk of the physical motions you're going to use, combining those processes into God's plane in the clouds and bypassing the power, the real power development in the system. And this little combination, energy gates, heaven and earth and God's, is a very safe system. Yes, anybody can do this. But this power level, the spiraling energy body being the fire energy, and the Bend the Bow being the metal, being the compression and release, which gives you the real Fa Jing in Tai Chi and Bagua. Heaven and earth starts the Fa Jing work, but Bend the Bow really gives you the raw physical power for it. This is completely safe so long as these two have been worked well enough to rid the body of tension, to heal the body of all your minor aches and pains and old injuries and whatever you've collected along the way. You've made enough internal space in the body that the compressions in Bend the Bow are not going to cause any damage. And you've sufficiently released your chi and learnt to dissolve and sync your energy and root and ground your energy that the spiraling energy body will not take over. The fire element will not engulf you. Then these two practices on the middle power band are perfectly safe. Yes? But going to this middle power band before you've done the proper work on the foundation level, and then you're asking for some problems. Yes? If you haven't opened up your spinal ligaments and you haven't got the spaces between the vertebrae to open up and for the cerebral spinal fluid production to be nice and high and in your spinal column, and you start to make deep compressions of the spine, now you're asking for trouble. Yes? And if you haven't got the ability to really root and ground your chi like that, going into the fire practice of bringing the energy up and moving it around, that can cause you problems. So this is why the system's built in the way it's built. So quite often people will go for energy gates, heaven and earth, and then move into the gods to get an idea of what this is about and to see what's going on, because the gods have the most expansive and opening movements. And then what you're basically doing with gods is you're taking it to an advanced wood practice. Yes? Energy gates, alignments, sinking chi, yes? Horizontal, turning, twisting, moving on to heaven and earth, vertical, bend, stretch, wood element, opening out the body, yes? Lengthening all of the soft tissues and getting the pulse deep in the body, and then taking this into the gods will expand the combination of those practices and make a really nice, soft, flexible and strong body. Yes? Okay? And then quite often people will move on to spiraling energy body and then bend the bow later, and then bring those practices into the gods later. When I say later, I mean 5-10 years further down the line. Okay, when they're sure their body is ready for those kind of practices. And if you go through the system in this way, either you take your time with the foundation practices before moving into the power, or from the foundation practices you go to the gods, the earth element, and combine that and expand that, and then later go back to these two. Either way, it's a safe method to work around the program. Now, that's this, yes? Foundation, power, boom, integration. 3 layers. So you have some understanding of that. Now let's take that and turn it this way round and look at it from this angle for a minute. From this angle, you start to see 16 threads that run through the practices. Much like if you look at a cable square on, you see all the different wires running through that cable. There's 16 threads that run through the Neigong, and they're called the 16 Neigong components. And they're quite interesting. You start with all the various breathing practices, and you can move on to alignments, bending and stretching all of the body's soft tissues, open and closing all of the body's cavities, joints, organs, glands, energy gates and centers in the body is another one. Yes? Feeling, moving, transforming and transmuting internal energies along the ascending, descending and connecting energy channels of the body is another one. And there's 16 of these processes. Some are in this practice of energy gates, some are in this practice of heaven and earth, some are in bend the bow, some are in spiraling, and all of them are in gods. So in each practice, you always have something to do with the breath. You always have something to do with the alignments. Yes? Open and closing, for instance, is learned through heaven and earth and bend the bow. So in the beginning, it's not in energy gates or spiraling. Okay? And reverse breathing processes are learned in bend the bow. And initially, they're not in heaven and earth or energy gates. So each one has its specifics, and some of the threads of Neigong are in all the practices. So here you learn this particular weave of Neigong, and here you learn another weave, and here another weave, and here another weave, and then here the whole weave comes together. Now let's look at this for a minute. Okay, there's 16 Neigong, and when you get the whole package together in God's plane in the clouds, they're all present. Now, if you go to a Moroccan bazaar or some place of this nature, and you see all these carpets, and you see all these blankets, and they're basically made out of 6 or 8 coloured threads, but there are many, many patterns. There are many, many different carpets. Yes? When you get 16 threads, there are many ways you can weave them together. Okay? And through these different weaves, the Neigong content produces Xingyi, Tai Chi, Bagua, meditation. Yes? It's not that one has something the other doesn't. It's more of the blend. Now, if you take 4 ingredients, flour, butter, sugar, eggs, depending on the quantity of those ingredients, you can have a very light sponge or you can have a really dense, heavy cake. No difference, only the quantities and ratios. So your alignments and your open and closings and your breathings, these are the ingredients. And weaving these together in different ways will make a very different practice. Yes? It can make you feel extremely different. I mean, extending your soft tissues very gently and getting a really strong pulse in the body has a completely different feeling to it to really lengthening open the soft tissues to your maximum comfort zone and having a light pulse underneath it. Just those two alone can make the body feel very different. So as you're going through your Neigong and as we're going through the different elements in the Neigong, just try and understand this. It's not that this one is better than that one, or that one's better than this one. They're unique. They give you different flavors. And as it's quite often put over, if you're going to eat ice cream every day of your life, you'll soon get bored if the only flavor is vanilla. The purpose of the different Neigong sets is so that you can develop your body at different times in different ways for different needs. So, if, for instance, you land a job, very high-powered job, really stressful, lots of tension, then you're going to want to weave your Neigong. Doesn't matter what the physical motion is that you're doing. You're going to want to weave your Neigong to such a degree of getting a lot of water into the practice to quench the fire in the nerves. That's going to be your high priority. And yet, if you have a motorcycle accident and you're lying on the road and you're not bleeding, there's nothing broken internally or externally, but you've just had one hell of a smash, then pulsing all your joints and cavities to start clearing that condensed chi in your body out of you is a very handy practice to have. And if you pull a ligament in your spine, if you slip a disc, then having marriage of heaven and earth to initially open up the ligaments of the spine and then bend the bow, shoot the arrow to strengthen those ligaments is a very handy practice to have. Yes? So this is why you learn the different sets and you play them at different times and you go around and around. Now let's say you've done your thing, you've done your practices for some years and you come to the gods. You've had a bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of this and a bit of this. And now you're here at the gods. You go and play with the gods, yes? Okay? And when you're practicing the gods, you look at what is weak. Are my alignments good? Is my breathing deep? Am I activating my left-right central channels? Am I getting the pulse to come from deep within my system? And you look, where is the imbalance inside of me? And then you look at what that imbalance is. Let's, for instance, say it's the breath. Your breathing is poor. Then you go to where the breath is taught, traditionally, marriage of heaven and earth. And you go and practice that for a while. And you get your breathing up. And then you put that back into the gods. You fold it into the gods. And then you go back to your gods and you go, oh, my breathing's better now. I spent a few months doing heaven and earth and got my breathing up. And now my breathing's good. What's weak? Let's There's a lot of movement of chi, but I'm really struggling with sinking it down through my legs and getting to the bottom of my etheric field. Great. You come out of the gods and you go and practice energy gates for a while, and you clear, sink and dissolve the energy below your feet to the bottom of your etheric field. And when you've got that, then you go back to the gods and you put it in the gods. And this is the way that you dip in and out, in and out, in and out, finding your weaknesses, strengthening them, and creating balance within the Neigong. Now, any time along the road, you can take this package, whether you're on just the energy gates or whether you've got all the way up to the gods, and you take this internal content and you put it into your Tai Chi form, you put it into your Bagua palm changes. And this is what brings it alive. This is what gives the Tai Chi, this is what gives the Bagua their healing capacities, their power production capacities, and the ability to obliterate stress and anxiety. So, as you're going through all of this, you can also use Tai Chi and Bagua to dip in and out. So you do a bit of Tai Chi and you're like, okay, what's missing? What's weak in my form? And whatever it is, you go into the specific Neigong that teaches that. So while you're practicing, you're not floating off down the supermarket buying your favourite ice cream or chocolate. You're focusing internally. What is it that is weak? What is it that is strong? What needs to be balanced? And then you go back to your Qigong, work on it, and plug it back in. Okay, so this is a basic idea of your Neigong and how you can look at the system. And then if you know what your specific health problems are, you can go in and go, this is what I need to achieve the result I'm looking for. Okay?